Good morning. You're very patient to be sitting through all these talks. I'm going to start by the word polycrisis. It's language that we use all the time. Right? Everyone talks about it. But let me try to put some color to what we mean by the polycrisis. So our 8 billion civilization sits on 500 billion human units worth of energy a year. 500 billion human unit worth of energy. In 2019 to 2020, the global energy demand increase was greater than all the installed renewables. All the installed renewables. So when we talk about the energy transition, that's just one aspect of it. What's the implication? Currently, we're looking at, not at 1.5 degrees, we're probably looking at closer to 2.5 to 3 degrees temperature rise globally. We're talking about a minerals transition, which means that we go from oil to a minerals economy. 80% of our biodiversity losses are as a result of our mineral extraction. Yet we're going to massively increase our mineral mining around the world to be able to do this transition. Our food systems are reliant on land, which we're going to have to move our economy from a material economy to a biomaterial economy, yet when we need the land right now is vulnerable to our food systems. Our food systems are vulnerable. All the way through to how many homes do you think Europe can afford to build currently if we were to live within the Paris Accord? You're looking at 140,000 homes across all of Europe. So when we talk about the polycrisis, I'm not talking about language. I'm talking about a crisis between energy, carbon, minerals, food systems, and then our capacity as society, your capacity as departments to make integrated decisions. The fundamental problem we're facing is that we can't address this structurally. This is no longer a question about choice or will. It's a question that the quantum of what we're talking about is of an order of magnitude that requires a different architecture of change. So the polycrisis is language, but the radical honesty of the quantum that we're facing is an order and a magnitude. We don't have the timber, we don't have the copper supply, we don't have the sand availability. Just basics. Forget about lithium, cobalt. I'm not even talking about those things. So when many policymakers around the world start to talk about, hey, we're going to build 300,000 homes, the UK government, there's no carbon budget for 300,000 homes. We're going to retrofit all of Europe. We don't have the minerals. We don't have the labor force. We don't have the mining capacity. We don't have the hydrocarbon budgets. So the polycrisis is not language. It's a systemic issue that we're facing a shift in our foundational industries.
Basically what you're saying is that we don't have the resources. We are standing at an inflection point. I'm working in public sector innovation. Many people here in the room do. How do we organize? What is going on in our institutions? What can we actually do?
I think it's a really fair question. And my invitation to this is recognizing that climate change is a symptom of the failure, not the failure itself. The structural failure is our relationship to the world. We're going to have to dematerialize our economies. We're going to have to build our capacity to make decisions in new ways. We're going to have to do all this stuff. And your question is absolutely right. How? How do we do this? Well, it starts by recognizing currently our representative models of sovereignty are no longer working. Our capacities to make decisions through representative sovereignties aren't working. Because the reality is we're living in a multitude of sovereignties. I know this is language. A multitude of sovereignties. The idea that a parliament can make a decision and it feels sovereign is increasingly problematic. So how do democracies in the 21st century, where representative democracy is no longer able to make consensus, work? And that requires a different way of organizing. very fundamentally. And I think it requires us, because if you're going to shift food systems, it's about shifting supply, demand, all the way through to accounting procedures of how we account for soil and soil capacity. That's the whole industrial transition. It's no longer about one thing or the other.
So what I understand is for people working in this field, for people being here, for people being interested in shifting things, people like us, we all have access to resources, we all have access to power. And it's basically on us using that influence to be present in this inflection point of human history, where we're either moving into mutually assured destruction or mutually enabled thriving. And you might ask, what's my role in this? What can I do if the system doesn't? Bureaucracy has a special role in this. It, at its best, actually enables us to create patterns, connected procedures to care for the common good. But right now, we're administering destruction. And we made destruction legal. And we built our economies and our social systems actually on top of that.
I mean, just to give that some color, if you were to look at the S&P 100 and you were to price social and environmental goods into the S&P 100, 68% of it is non-viable. The closest we can come to is almost like thinking about how we rebuilt Europe, is the scale of the industrial transformation that we're facing. Nobody will say this, but that's the scale, what the numbers are already looking like, and it's baked in.
So it means the metaphor is a little bit like we were trying to stitch with a good intention the wrong parts of a clothing piece together, meant for a public body that had the idea of being static, disregarding that the public is an emergent function of the systems around us. And it's something that we need to rebuild. It's something that we need to care for.
Can I just double line that? That's a really key point, what Caroline said. The public is an emergent function of the multiple sovereignties. It is not the state. The public is not the state. It's an emergent function of those sovereignties. And it's through the dialogue across those sovereignties that actually the public is formed. I think this subtlety is really key.
And I'm just trying to give a little bit more, let's say, of my reality into what you're saying. And in order to build this function, we could say, is that too complex? No, I don't think it's too complex. But actually, at this unprecedented moment, it needs us shifting direction. It needs us creating socially robust connections. And I would like to stick with this metaphor because I think most important in that process is a tool, I would say a needle with a common thread. And the needle is a tool that actually changed the course of human development. It entered over the last 25,000 years all of our lives. It changed the course of how humanity developed. It's both micro and massive, and I actually brought like a needle with me. I don't know if you can see this tiny tool. And if anybody would be able to actually thread this needle briefly. It's not that easy when I'm trying to do it. I'm reminded of my grandmother. I actually have to like sharpen the end of the thread and then take a moment of precision and focus. And in order to do that, I could name 10 people here in the room threading a needle in the next 1,000 minutes, which is the average of the time we're awake during the day. But we're in a moment where we actually have to take the time and cut it into 1 minute. 10 people agreeing on something, 10 people coordinating something around a joint effort, still doable, right? And if we would actually document our learnings, if we would be radically honest, saying what went wrong and what didn't, and actually make our insights explicit, we could accelerate the learning rate of the whole room. We could actually enable the next generation of 10 people to do the whole thing in 10 seconds. And that's what we need right now. We need just simply communication, coordination, moving from control to learning to create a baseline for exponential collaboration. Because what you're saying, these ecological tipping points, they actually need us to create social tipping points. Doing that in bureaucracy and bringing it back, it's the question of how much social fabric can we actually stitch together around public bodies that are breaking apart at the moment. How can we do this?
How can we do it? I mean, and I think your point about moving from control orientation to a learning orientation. How do you build the policy architecture for learning? How does Parliament approve a learning framework for transformation as opposed to approving certainties, truths, projected truths? That requires different capability. And Caroline, you've been doing some of this stuff.
So our needle with a common thread is called 10 times 100, 10 times 100 days that are right now at all of your hands. Let's say there are 1,000 people here at the festival. We have 10 times 100, 1,000 is 1,000,000 days here today. And our invitation is, what would it look like to actually coordinate, go through the eye of the needle together, and turn around into a direction that is moving away from destruction, creating public bodies, social fabrics for something that is an adaptive, regenerative mode. And each of you has influence. Each of you can connect with somebody today who can leverage your influence. Have a serious talk. Don't shy away from it. Speak about the fear, but also look into the possibilities in order to be able to pat yourself on the shoulder, maybe in 1,000 days, and say, well done, younger me. Good decision you took during Creative Bureaucracy Festival 2023. Thank you.
Thank you.